live. I'm reading out of Lord of the Horizon. Lord of the Horizon. It is a far memory book by Joan Marshall Grant. She wrote 7 books of her previous incarnations. She died in 1989. And this book is about Ra-Ab. She had a life as Ra-Ab, a male in ancient Egypt. And we are here in the 4th part of this book, in chapter 4, and is entitled Fear in the Palace. Not long before we returned to the Oryx, Senusert made the yearly progress to the northern garrison. He usually took Patakifa with him on such occasions, but she was within 2 months of the birth of her 2nd child, and so had preferred to accept Becket's invitation to stay at the house of the 2 winds. With her, she brought her son, the young Amenemhet. He had already become firm friends with Becket's children, and Patakifa told me that he was never happier than when playing with them. He is so like Senusert, she said fondly. Sometimes I think he is Senusert, and that those miserable years with his grandmother never happened, because I am his mother as well as his wife. Then she added slowly, I hate the Babylonians, Ra-Ab. Sometimes I think she resents us living in the rooms which once were hers, that she too thinks my child is Senusert grown young again, and is trying to take him away from me. Even a woman who is also a priest is sometimes the prey of fancies when her body is occupied in making a child, I said gently. Yes, women are foolish and are pretty and are prey to fancies, even the wisest of them, though I am not very wise. You're right, Ra-Ab. My apprehension is not strong enough to be called fear, has increased since this 2nd child stirred in my womb. A leopard is never so fierce as when defending her cubs. Why has a woman less than her usual power when defending her unborn child from fear? Perhaps it is because each of us has only a certain vitality available. If we use that vitality in the way of a priest, the body must make do with what remains. I'm not myself greatly experienced in such matters, but many priests have told me that magic is more exhausting even to the body than is physical labor. Your body is willing to live on less vitality than it really requires, but it will not let the child go hungry. To prepare for birth, the unborn must gather strength, and for a time its mother must become its willing servant. The child has the first demand, and only the vitality, which is not need, is free for the mother to expend herself. You are very comforting, Ra-Ab. I shall look forward to the time when I am again the Patakifa who does not shrink from shadows, but instead can take a light in her hand and drive them away, to see them, like all shadows, for flee from a light which gives them challenge. I knew Mary wanted to talk to Patakifa alone, so making an excuse that I had promised to play with the children, I left them together. When Mary came to find me, I had already said good night to the older children and was telling the little Amenemhet the story of the quail chick, a story which had been the favorite of Amenemhet when he was the same age. The sky was soft with dusk as Mary and I left the nurseries to walk through the garden, hushed and cool after the heat of the day. Have you and Patakifa decided who is to hold the crook and flail? I asked. If the choice were ours, Senusert would be declared Pharaoh tomorrow. Is Patakifa thinking as a priest or as a wife? We talked as women who love Senusert. He refuses to admit that his father is showing himself inadequate as Pharaoh. Senusert says that it is only generosity which makes his father dismiss the old officials and allow the co-ruler to appoint new ones in their stead. He even pretends that he will do the same when his son is old enough, so that young men shall rule in their own generation. Then Patakifa told me how glad she was when Ameni became captain of the bodyguard, for now he is always with Senusert when they go on expeditions. Does she think he is in danger? Senusert, I mean, not Ameni. She is afraid for him, of that I'm certain, but whether it is Amenemhet she mistrusts, or Seneferu, or something else, I couldn't quite understand. She became evasive when I tried to make her be more definite. You think it is more than the anxiety natural to a woman with child? I think so, but I'm not sure, Ra-Ab. I asked her whether there was any hope that Amenemhet would change his mind about abdicating, and I found that she did not know that Royden had made any such suggestion. She was so startled that she cried out. Of course he wouldn't abdicate. To him it would be the final acceptance that he had failed Egypt. I think that it is a fear which never leaves him, that he will be, or perhaps has already been, unworthy of his trust. I knew that Mary was deeply troubled. There is fear in the palace, Ra-Ab. Amenemhet is afraid. Of what? Patakifa is afraid, not for herself, but for Senusert and her children. There was fear in the palace when we stayed there years ago when Ameni was a baby, but there oughtn't to be fear there now. Not now, when the Babylonian is dead. Soon after Egypt had rejoiced at the birth of his second son, Senusert asked that I visit him in the royal city, as soon as it was possible for me to do so. The message added that if for any reason I could not make the journey, he would come to the Oryx. So secret and immediate were the matters which he wished to discuss. Within 3 days I had started north, and Senusert's own litter bearers met me at the royal landing steps. I was conducted straight to his personal apartments, and as soon as we were alone he told me why he had sent me so urgent a summons. I regret having to ask you to make this sudden journey, but when you have heard my news, I am sure you will see I was justified, and that I dared not trust it even to the most faithful messenger. I am co-ruler, and my oath of allegiance to Amenemhet is more binding than any other similar oath in all Egypt. Yet it may not be possible for me to keep that oath, and yet remain loyal to the laws of the Watchers. When two loyalties conflict, you must always choose the higher, I reminded him. I know. That is why I must tell you that I think my father is mad. Are you the only one who suspects this? How can I tell? I have not dared to discuss it with anyone except my wife. A month ago my father was afflicted with a disorder of the bowels. Patakifa asked to be allowed to heal him. This he grudgingly permitted, and within 2 days he was restored to health. He has never treated me as an intimate, though he listens to my suggestions with apparent interest, and has at no time questioned my judgment. Often, as you know, he lets me give audience in his stead. In fact, he seems eager to let more and more authority pass into my hands. Until a month ago, I should never have questioned his sanity, even though he seems afraid of all human contacts. But the day before I appealed to you for help I most desperately need, he summoned me to his apartments, and as impersonally as though he were describing an architect's plan for a new village, he told me that a plot to kill him had failed only because Patakifa's exceptional powers had prevented the poison being effective. It was only then that I realized that he had been brooding as to the cause of his brief illness. I asked him for the names of those he believed to be conspiring against him, but he refused to give them to me. All he would say was, to name an enemy is to believe that those whom you have not already recognized as enemies are your friends. It is easy to die at the hand of a friend, for you are not protected against him. I tried to expostulate, but he took no notice and went on. I shall not tell you the names of our enemies, your enemies and mine, or you will trust those whose names I have not spoken. I'm an old man of wide experience, and I command you, I, Amenemhet, Pharaoh of the two lands, command you to trust no one, even those whom you imagine to be faithful. A man has only one friend he can trust, himself. Only one who will not betray him, himself. Only one in whose company he is at peace, himself. Be not deceived by your wife or your son. Be not deceived by your mother or your father. Be not deceived by your grandparents or your grandchildren. Be not deceived by friendship. Only then need you fear no one. Be not deceived by a smile of greeting, for then you will not hear the whisper of the assassin. Be not deceived by generosity, for then you need not fear the thief. Be not deceived by words of kindliness, for then you will not be destroyed by falsehood. Be not deceived by any act of friendship, for then you will never cry out, I am forsaken. Then he said, Pharaoh has spoken, you may go. I tried to argue with him, but he would not listen. Instead he gave me a papyrus on which he had scribed this terrible advice. Read it, he said, many times before sleeping, and when you wake, so that my words brand your memory like a rod of hot copper which sears flesh beyond healing. That is the greatest heritage I can give to you, my son, the strength to be alone, always alone. Something must have happened to him, Ra-Ab, of which we know nothing. He continues to administer the laws, yet this is considered advice to his son, the son he has appointed as the next Pharaoh. It is a negation of everything in which the eyes of Horus believe. We know that only when a man gives love to his fellow can he receive it from the gods. We know that he who remains separate as a grain of corn which never enters the ground and gradually loses its power of growth until it becomes sterile, perhaps forever. No act of cruelty or injustice has ever been recorded against Amenemhet. Before the 42 assessors, he could say that I have not done that law I have not broken. Yet the greatest of all laws he denies, which is that man should give love unsparingly as the sun gives out heat. To be separate is at last to know the ultimate cold of a dead moon, darkened, insensate in the eternal night. Why has he shut himself away, Ra-Ab? Why? Is it because he has some secret of which he is so bitterly ashamed that he tries to close it in his heart, even if that heart must remain closed also against all happiness? Has he betrayed a friend and known such bitter remorse that he dare not again give friendship? Has he killed someone with so little justice that he dare not receive life? I have tried so desperately hard, Ra-Ab, to give him sufficient confidence to speak freely to me, but it is useless. 3 times, to my knowledge, he has opened his heart to you, and there is a chance, a slender chance, that he may do so again. If you demand audience with him, he cannot refuse you, but there is little hope that he will admit you to his private rooms, for he did not do so even when you brought back to him his son. Yet if you ask him to see you alone, not as Pharaoh and nomarch, but because you are both eyes of Horus, I think he will not dare to deny that right. He is afraid of the eyes of Horus, Ra-Ab, for he even warned me against them. He said, remember, Senusert, that the eyes of Horus made me Pharaoh, yet if they judge me unworthy, they would without hesitation take from me the crook and flail. You have been trained by them, therefore they will be reluctant to admit that they have failed with you. But do not trust too much in that reluctance, for if they ever decide that some other man would wear the double crown more in accordance with their traditions, then you would die, and a magnificent sarcophagus will conceal their failure. This is chapter 4. The next chapter is chapter 5, and it is entitled The Unseen Guest.